Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. Each week, while working on the new album, the Dead Milkmen ask each other a question.
How would you like to be commemorated or memorialized after life or death? There's a lot of options. I really had no idea.
Are you sure the next question is now?
So, there's ground burial, cremation, MuMufication still happens, tree burials, cryonics, tree planting, which is mixing the ashes with seeds, aquamation, which sounds fascinating. It's kind of like cremation, but with water, like you deteriorate faster. Resumation, which is decomposing with like an alkali solution, high pressure. Space burial.
Space burial?
Yeah.
Space burial, yeah.
So your ashes, or maybe if you're lucky enough, your corpse can somehow be, as if we didn't put enough shit in there.
Oh, okay. It doesn't work. They conned a bunch of people and they shot nothing into space. It's very sad. There was a little boy who was sick and wanted to go into space, and they basically conned his parents. They said a representation of your ashes.
It sounds like a concept album in the works.
Buried in the sky.
The Moody Blues with space burial.
Which brings me to another point about this. You guys have several songs that have to do, well, and ones that I've contributed to as well. Sanitary Times with Electroplating, which was the next one on here. Which there's also Plastination.
You can still do that?
No, but there is that patent for it.
Okay.
I'm sure you could find somebody to do it to you.
Yeah.
Keep feeling Plastination.
If you want, I can send some links for places that do electroplating. It doesn't say specifically, humans.
I think you can buy the tools necessary at your local hardware store.
Yeah, it's a lot of copper and coils and yeah. So Plastination was the last one, right? Yeah, Exposure, which is letting animals in nature take care of it.
What about you, Dan? What are you going to do?
Well, good question. So I think my favorite method is this. I want to do this aquamation thing. I want to find out what happens. The body. All I know is I don't want my freaking body left. That bothers me. And you're spending a lot of money on like a wooden case that's going to end up rotting. I see these mausoleums. They're beautiful, more than any home of any living person I've seen. And that's great. Your corpse is in there. I don't want a corpse left behind. I feel like I've already taken enough space on this earth. I don't need to take up any more space. So the other option is this Exposure, which is letting like animals tear my corpse apart.
My great-grandmother, that was her saying that she used to say, for real, I'm not joking, don't bother burying me, just stick a bone up my ass and let the dogs drag me away. And I've talked about this on several different shows because I don't think a week goes by when I don't think about that. Like, are these like wild dogs, like you imagine, like, these little African wild dogs, like, jackals and stuff. And like, is there a funeral where they insert the bone and they step back and the dogs run in?
There can be.
Yeah.
That's the next question. A different kind of funeral service. Yeah. The last one was this, which I can't believe is real. I don't know. Vinyl, what is it called? Vinyl compression. So somehow your ashes would get mixed in with whatever creates this vinyl record. And you can even have your voice, if you know you're going to die, I guess, you can have your voice recording on said record.
That's oddly enough what Thomas Edison thought that the big use for the phonograph was going to be, sort of. He thought it would be to record the dying the last words of dying people. And I thought, there's a great idea. I give it a 68. It had a good beat, but you can't dance to it. Or everybody down to the parlor to listen to grandma kick the bucket one more time.
There's no other use
stick it up her ass.
of recording something and repeating it. There's no other reason for it. Just the last words of somebody here.
It's the most hipster thing in the world, though, the vinyl pressing. It's like I run a store that sells typewriters in the Brooklyn area.
What about now your ashes mixed with cassette tape?
Yeah.
Cassette tapes seem to be in again. But I actually I have so many answers to this. I really would like electroplating, but I don't think, like Joe said, I don't think they do that anymore. And I'm not going to go for plastination. I don't want to biodegrade in a million years.
You just said you didn't want your space. You don't want to take up the space you're taking up now. Which electroplating would do.
Electroplate me and then shoot it into space.
Oh, okay.
I want all of them.
You want all of them.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing is a trivia question for anybody listening. How many Dead Milkmen songs have something to do with burials?
Do you have the answer?
No.
Okay. All of them.
There's a bunch though. Air Crash Museum, Buried in the Sky, Cold Hard Ground, Sanitary Times, Infant of Prague talks about bodies not decomposing,
but being embalmed.
Yeah. All right. So that's my answer, which is all of them.
Okay. Let's see. I have a couple of comments. I think that I would like to be cremated, or if it becomes more available here in Pennsylvania, I'd like to be turned into compost and used to plant trees. There's a startup out in Washington State where it's legal. The startup is called Recompose and would provide a link to their website. I heard a podcast about this. I couldn't find the exact link, but if you search for Recompose, and you'll find plenty of information about them online. They are a full-service funeral home specializing in human composting. And the process takes about 6 to 8 weeks. And you can do pretty much anything, or the family can do pretty much anything they want with the compost at the end of the process. You can tell them to turn it over. There's a 700-acre protected land area out in Washington State where they use the soil to plant things and stuff. Or, your family could take that compost and plant next year's vegetable garden if they wanted. I don't know. So we'll provide a couple of links for that. It's a very interesting process. There's pictures and everything. I would be remiss, though, if I did not mention MuMufication. And this is by our friends, the KLF, have started a process or a program. You can send away for a brick that contains a little section in the middle that can hold 23 grams of your cremated remains. And what you do is you instruct your loved ones when you die to send back the brick. It's a brick. Send back a brick with your remains to them. And they are building what they call the People's Pyramid in Toxteth, England. So we'll provide plenty of links about that and some photos. You can probably see on the screen right now what the brick looks like. That's also a very appealing sort of Dadaist thing that I might actually partake in. I talked to it about to Melissa about it. She's like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I think I'd like to do that too. So, so those are my two answers.
Yeah, I'm a big KLF fan, and I think that's where some of my body will go forward too. So that's it. You don't have any plans for a funeral or anything, or?
No, I don't want a funeral. I don't want a memorial. I don't want a tombstone. I don't want a burial site. I don't want any of that crap. No.
Okay, then if I'm up, I want to start first by, I was on vacation. I just got back last week. I would like to thank Matt Finale, AKA Caustic, for filling in for me as the singer and keyboardist for the Dead Milkmen for that week, which dovetails very nicely with tonight's topic because Matt is my choice to replace me in the Dead Milkmen if I ever die. So I already have my replacement figured out if I die. I say if I die, because I'm not sure I actually can die. Because if I die, I would then be the late Rodney Anonymous. And as you guys know, I'm never late for anything. So I can't see it happening. I will say if I do die, I am 100% certain of what my obituary will look like. It will contain the very first line will point out that I am a member of a one-hit wonder band who had nothing to do with the one hit. And I am totally okay with that. In fact, I'm rather proud of it.
We had 2 hits actually. So,
well, I know you're counting Patio. You're counting the sun.
I'm counting Mitchie Camaro and Girl.
I'm thinking more the sun turns our patio into a lifeless hell because
that should be the third one.
You're thinking of U.S. plays. I'm thinking of worldwide. Because of that song, I can't walk down the streets of Reykjavik without people running up and trying to touch me.
Patio was #1 in Mauritania.
Yeah, that's true. It's a huge hit in Estonia. It is. I love it. And that'll probably come up, although, he was well known in other parts of the world. As for the disposal of my remains, I do have a pretty extensive experience in building coffins. So you think I would want to build one for myself, but instead I believe I'm going to probably be cremated. As my father says, good enough for Julius Caesar, good enough for me. And I think that is a good way to think about it. Although I am interested, and we touched a little bit what they call a green burial or green funeral, which is where they basically take your unembalmed corpse, throw it in a biodegradable sack, chuck it in a hole in the ground, and plant a tree on top of it. I actually think that's a pretty damn cool way to be disposed of. It's like, remember the old Monty Python thing where the guy goes to the funeral home with his mother and he's got her like in a sack and they're like, well, we can bury her, burn her, or dump her. It's like, dump her? Yeah, in the Thames. And then finally they offer him the option of eating her and the audience is booing. I love that sketch, but I like the idea of the tree on top. What happens is I used to have the idea that I would be cremated and then different people would take turns carting my crematory urn around. Kind of like what they did with Jeremy Bentham. After he died, he had his body autopsied, he had used for science. Then they took what was left and they made a wax head, stuffed him with straw, and they would take him to meetings. And in the meeting minutes, it would say, Mr. Bentham is present, but not voting. But my idea was to have people take me to like my remains in the urn to like concerts, or if they were going in the recording studio, take it there and you could use it as like a shaker or percussion. I would still be involved in the music industry and I might end up on a hit, actually taking part on a hit. So that was the idea how I wanted to do it. But then Vienna started talking about the idea of having our ashes interned together in a columbarium at Laurel Hill Cemetery. So if that happens, I'll probably have to build one of my boxes, like my coffins, to house both of our ashes. And I'm hoping Laurel Hill will give me some sort of discount because we played there and raised some money for them. But finally, as to funerals, and I do want to point this out, I do not want a funeral or any sort of memorial service. And this is because funerals for musicians are the worst. They're the worst thing that you can experience. I've been to lots of them. And although some people...
You're not going to be at that one.
Yes, he would.
I'll be there in my remains will be there. And I don't want, here's the thing, even if I'm not there, I don't want it happening. Okay. It's like saying, well, you weren't there when the guy blew himself up on the corner. I'm like, no, but I didn't want him to do it. I was a lot of fun in my lawyering classes. Where's I going with that? Oh yeah. So I'm just saying that people get up. If you're a musician, a lot of the people at your funeral will be talking about themselves and their projects. And they'll get up and they say things like, well, Rodney's songs influenced me, just as they influenced my new album, improvisational jazz from the heart of Brooklyn. And you're like, who is this person? Who it is a lot of people talking about themselves. I mean, seriously, I've been musician funerals again are the worst. It's like, yes, and that's why we dedicated our new album. There's a little print on the back going, like, you're here to sell something. It's horrible. And finally, the thing is, another reason I don't want a funeral or anything is I'm an atheist. And if you're an atheist and atheists look at me now, someone will get up at your funeral and talk about God. Someone will do it. A lot of people who are religious won't do it, and I thank them for that. They'll respect that. In Vienna's living will, it basically says if you get up and start talking about God or angels or anything, you'll get to meet them. So whereas for me, I have a different thing. Somebody would get up, I'm sure, and go, even though Rodney didn't believe in God, I believe he is with the Lord right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be there at my funeral, but I recommend that you folks, if you're an atheist and you're going to have a funeral, you do this. Make a recording of yourself saying, hi, it's whatever your name is, and I'm here with God right now. And he thinks you're an asshole. And then say like, hey, Jesus just called you a pussy wimp. Have that, record that, and get somebody to play it through the sound system if you're an atheist and somebody gets up to talk about God. I don't have a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I want to talk about music at funerals. Originally, when I was going to have a funeral, I had all the songs picked out, but then it was either Alex or God, I'm blanking on the names of the guys. So they're going to kill me over at I Die, You Die. We're talking about their funerals, and one of them said, at the end of his funeral, he wanted the song played, the #1 song in heaven by Sparks, as everybody went out. And I thought, well, what's the point of me having a funeral? That's freaking genius. And then the other thought I had was the bad thing on funerals is ex-lovers show up. I don't want ex-lovers at my funeral because, first of all, I need a big space. I would need like, let's hold it down at the stadium. But that's just got to be weird and awkward. So no, none of that. And that's my advice for funerals. I'm turning my brain off now.
I haven't really given a thought to planning my own funeral. I'd probably just leave it up to other people to do a memorial if they want. I would like to be cremated personally. And I like my ashes not to be in an urn, but rather a guitar case, a Gibson guitar case, the same one that my SG is in, maybe, if it's still around. And then I would like that to be buried as if it was a coffin in a plot, so that people could put flowers over it or whatever. Maybe some of the ashes can be left out and also mixed in with wildlife. That would be nice, I guess. And I would like a headstone.
What would you like on your headstone?
I would like it to say, here lies a pretty good guitar player, beloved all around the world.
Except in Germany.
I was going to say, I just imagine tons of German tourists lining up just on his grave.
Something like that. I'll get it better as time goes on. Maybe whom the actual phrase. And my parents would be in this. The reason for that is my parents would be in the same plot if they're dead by then. Maybe if they're still alive, then I guess they'll be coming soon. Coming soon. Mom and dad.
Yeah. Put it on headstone. Coming soon.
I was going to say,
Mom and dad
like, I went past the funeral home and I saw his face under coming attraction.
I'm not dead yet.
The plot thickens. Well, what's great is none of us will ever know what happens. So.
Get your tombstone done in advance. I'm going to make one that says he stabbed Vladimir Putin to death with this pencil, and we'll have the pencil under. And then I have to live up to that. I'd be out there looking for Putin.
Oh, you know what? I looked down and I saw this note I had made that plastination is actually quite different than what I thought it was. Oh. It's like removing all the liquids from the body. Yeah. So you end up being like a mass of like tissues, and they use them sometimes for educational.
Yeah, Body Works. You remember when Body Works was touring?
Yeah.
And they found out that those were dead Chinese political prisoners, a lot of them. Yeah. Yeah, there's an ethical problem right there.
Yeah, way to bring that down.
Well, hold on a minute now, but we're saying that, but let's just say I don't know. Let's think.
I'm going to recommend the
If
Body
they,
World
if they were dead
exhibit, but
Bolivians, we could have run.
now I got to recommend something else. Yeah, I recommend you figure out what it is that you would like to do with your body. And Hunter Thompson had a really cool thing. He had like his ashes like shot out of a cannon and fireworks. I don't remember all of it. We'll have a link to whatever it was, but he did it. Yeah, and like I said, you never know if it actually people carry it out for you or not. You just got to trust them. Yeah, I don't have anything else to recommend. Just know what you want to do with your dead body.
That's right, because if you folks watching this don't know what you want to do with your remains legally, now because you've watched this, we have that option. You don't want to know what we got planned. Have you met my manatees, Mr. Bond?
I would like to recommend thinking about this ahead of time. So I can't speak for other folks here, or anywhere, but as someone who is married and has a child, it's kind of very important that you have a living will set up, that you have, kind of a will set up so that things are clear and direct after you pass away. There's no, it gets complicated real fast if you don't have these documents in place. And one of the things I did a couple of years ago with my father, my mom passed away about 4 years ago, but my father, I sat down with him, and my sister and I sat down with him, and we talked about all this. We talked about the paperwork involved. We talked about living wills. We talked about wills. We talked about power of attorney. I urge you to do some research in this area. I recommend you do it. And I recommend that you plan ahead, because you don't want the courts deciding things that you don't want to happen. So try and get it, it is difficult to talk about. Some people find it very difficult, but luckily my sister and my father and I had no problem talking about it. It made complete sense to plan ahead and deal with this. So I recommend that you do the work ahead of time, and you don't wait until it's too late. So that's my recommendation.
It is a very difficult discussion to have with a loved one, unless that loved one is a clown, in which case it is fun. It's like, well, you want to be buried in a clown car with Twinkle and Boppo, and let me write this down. So it is. If you don't have a loved one who is a circus clown, no, it is very difficult. But if you do have one, it is a conversation you need to have over again. Okay, so what about, this is important. Okay, so as I mentioned, I was on vacation last week. So Saturday morning, our show goes out at 6 a.m. on Saturday. I try not to check my message by a text message from a neighbor. So I thought, oh my God, something happened to the house. And I've got security cameras everywhere. I didn't see anything. The cats love to trigger them, but I was like, oh my God, something's happened. So I opened it up, and he was kind of upset with me because he said, you guys have been talking about F-Troop, or me actually, off and on for the last couple episodes, and you have not once mentioned the Larry Storch Museum, which is just a couple blocks from where you live. And he's like, do you have no South Philly pride? And I'm like, A, why would you write this at 6:30? And B, I have tons of South Philly pride. See, look, it says right here, South Philly. So I just do want to mention it was closed down during COVID. It is open this month. The Larry Storch Museum, which is easy to find. It's on a section of what used to be called Van Pelt Street here in South Philly. It was renamed in the mid to late 80s as Larry Storch Way. Larry Storch had lived in the house next to where the museum is. He did a lot of vaudeville here in Philly. I visited it once. I plan to go back. It's one of those things like the Mario Lanza Museum, which has a picture of Mario Lanza in the same school room with Frank Rizzo when they were both kids. That's another must see. But the Larry Storch Museum, a lot of people just know him as Corporal Agarn from F Troop. He was a lot more than that. He played a lot of parts. He was actually one of the original Ghostbusters. Now, when I say original Ghostbusters, I do not mean this sham bullshit with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis and all that. Talking the original Ghostbusters when it was him and Forrest from F Troop also, and the guy in the gorilla costume. That's the real Ghostbusters. And it was a real thing. And if you don't know about history,
They did an animated version when I was a kid.
They made an animated series later on, I think called like the Real Ghostbusters. And then, just to not to capitalize, to get their money back for being ripped off by Mr. Dan Aykroyd. So I just want to mention that also. Larry Storch was born on January 8th, 1923, which means this coming January 8th, and he's still alive. He's still out there kicking ass. He will be 100 years old. It's his centennial celebration, and the Larry Storch Museum is gearing up for that. So they're opening back up again. They'll have tours now post-COVID. I will put a link in the description to a guided tour of the Larry Storch Museum. And again, he did a lot more acting. I don't have time to cover it than most folks know. Okay, the second thing that I want to tell you to do, and this is a fun little thing I thought about when I was on vacation, go to a used bookstore and get a true crime book. Right? And first of all, I have so many questions about this book. First, it's the font from The Godfather. It's Charles Manson. And they were like, how do we make him scarier? Make him green. So it's like Franken Manson, and I didn't do anything to it. But get one of these books, and in the margins, write weird things like, "Is he my real dad?" or "Great idea," or "I must try this," and just leave it somewhere. Because there are a lot of people who are into true crime up until true crime gets really close to them. And then they're not so much into true crime. And that is a fun thing to do. And finally, and I'm not going to name any names, but whoever did this was not a good idea. One of the people I'm guessing on this video invited Madison Cawthorn to the coke-fueled orgy. And I know, I'm not going to name any names. I know you felt bad for him. Because he's been arrested a couple times for driving under a suspended license, and he's getting divorced from the weird Russian wife who won the fake Pilates contest. But he's not fun, and he's crying all about, "Ooh, I went to a coke-filled orgy," and then he's saying like, "Oh, I exaggerated things." He's like, "Oh, I might have exaggerated a bit. Rodney's penis isn't 11 inches long." It's like, no. Oh, well, anyway. So please, people, Stop inviting Madison Cawthorn to coke-fueled orgies. It's not going to end well for anybody. All right, thank you.
I'd like to turn your attention to a YouTube channel called Parlogram Auctions. It's run by a guy, I think his name is Andrew Milton, who runs Parlogram Auctions, which is an auction site. But this YouTube channel is basically his way of showing off some obscure albums or cassettes or 8-tracks and stuff, and telling you some pretty cool stories behind them. They're almost all Beatles, so you might need to have a little interest in the Beatles to like this, I think. But it's still pretty fascinating to me. He lives in Austria. He's originally from England. He has a really soothing British accent. His elocution is superb, and he basically just gives you stories about obscure mispressings or weird anomalies about pressings, and he also reviews things like what's the story behind the 8-track cartridge? When were those released on the Beatles catalog, and what do they sound like? And he compares sounds of different pressings, like, let's hear the German pressing of this Revolver album, Beatles album, compared to the English pressing, compared to the American pressing, which sounds better. So it's a lot of
noticeable differences.
Oh yeah, he can't actually play the because of copyright reasons play them, but he shows you stereograph images and compares them. He gets really nerdy and really technical, and I love it. Maybe. But he has thousands and thousands of views, and so that I'm not the only one out there. Like, did you know, for example, that the Beatles released 78 RPM records in the 60s in India? They did. Well, EMI still is pressing 78s in India, and he talks about those. He talks about Apple released the entire Beatles catalog in 2009 on a USB drive. I don't know if you knew that, but he talks about that, the technical issues with it. So I don't know. You might find it interesting.
I hope he goes into great detail about how the Beatles convinced Charles Manson to go out and kill people. I know they tend to skip over that.
I don't know.
Well, thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.